All right, guys, welcome in. Hey, just going to show you guys real quick. I built a new microphone boom with the wing nut. Basically, essentially, I built an arm. This is the second prototype that I have built for the adjustable, removable boom mic for my microphone. But always a work in progress around here, it seems like, don't it? All you got to do is just open up that wing nut a little bit, and you can adjust this ever how you need it to be. I'm going to set it about right there. So it's a Saturday ride and talk about pro wrestling. So let's get into it.
T-bone roars like a thunderstorm blast. Engine growling as the trees rush past. Wheels on fire carve the mountain's face. The legend rides with a reckless grace. T-bone shadow cuts the sky through the peaks where...
Alright guys, welcome back as we take out on kind of a little bit overcast afternoon. Hopefully we don't get rained on. That's not the plan. Saturday Slams, I guess, is what we're going to call this series. I don't know. Well, I'll come up with a name eventually, but just wanted to kind of bring up a wrestling story today. And of course, I was shooting earlier, and y'all saw the first version of this. It was kind of flopping all over the place, and I just couldn't handle that anymore, so I went to the hardware store. I probably got in this whole thing maybe $6. So I built the boom for $6. Most of the parts I already had laying around. The strap I had laying around, I just had to basically buy the nuts, the wing nut, the other nuts that I used to attach it to the clip with. But somebody messaged me the other day and they asked me why I haven't said anything about Charlie Kirk. You guys who have been around my channel for a while, y'all know I really don't do the political stuff. Personally, I think politics is overdone. I think it's been done to death. But I will say I am very sad that Charlie Kirk was killed, assassinated. I want to send prayers to his family, to his wife and his kids. I cannot imagine, guys, the hell that they're going through. Because from the things that I've heard, it happened while they saw it. They were sitting there. And that's horrible, guys. That's absolutely horrible. And that's kind of, I don't do politics on this channel because people take this crap too serious, guys. And what I mean by that is, the political climate in this country has gone crazy. People are emotion driven now with everything. There's no more logic. Everything is emotionally driven. We need to get rid of this emotional baggage it don't belong in politics. Now a man has lost his life, a wife has lost her husband, a child has lost his father over stupid politics. Because you disagree with his opinion, this gentleman had to lose his life. I backed out of the politics stuff back years ago, probably 2016, 2017. I just got away from the political. I quit watching it. I quit listening to it. I'm going to be honest with you. I really didn't know who Charlie was. I did watch some of his videos from time to time. They would pop up on the shorts on the news feed, and I would watch him debate these college kids. But I didn't know, everything about him. I have done a little studying, and it's a loss. It's very sad. But no matter what your politics is, guys, nobody should lose their life over stupid politics. That's why I don't talk politics, because friendships are lost, feelings get hurt, people, it doesn't seem like you're allowed today to have your own opinion about things. People want to hear your opinion or their opinion come out of your mouth. But that's all I'm going to say about it. Prayers for Charlie Kirk's family. Senseless, should have never happened. This gentleman should have never lost his life behind this. But yeah, I've addressed it now, so there we go. Now, like I said, y'all know I don't do that whole politics thing, but we are going to talk today about a different type of politics. We're going to talk about the politics of professional wrestling. Now, people say, what are you talking about, T-Bone? Politics of professional wrestling? Yep, politics of professional wrestling. Now, I am a Southern wrestling fan, meaning that growing up in the South, we were all about our wrestling in the South. I think the Southern wrestling fans are different than other wrestling fans. Not to say we're better or worse, but we seem to be, we get really passionate about things here in the South. But back in the day, there was what we call territories. There was Georgia Championship Wrestling, there was Florida Championship Wrestling, there was Mid-Atlantic Wrestling, there was, of course, WWWF Wrestling, Vince McMahon Sr. There was the Von Erichs out in Texas, Portland Wrestling over on, on the West Coast. So wrestling was very much all over the place, regional. It was territorial. So a lot of these wrestlers, older wrestlers, and you'll hear them in interviews, they'll talk about old school, the old way of doing things. So the old way of doing things back in them days were you travel. You travel from one territory to the other trying to get your name out there. But, a lot of these guys back then would end up in a storyline and they're liable to be in that territory 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever the storyline is. And then once the storyline was over, once it reached this crescendo, then they would move on to a different territory. But a lot of times they wrestled in front of the same fans night after night after night. And that's how they build up a rapport with promoters. Just say, for example, Ole Anderson, who was a promoter for Georgia Championship Wrestling. He would call Jim Crockett and he would say, hey, how did so-and-so do working for you? Oh, he did great. Or how did so-and-so, well, he's got a great look. He knows how to move. He's a good wrestler, but he's bland. He didn't get over with the fans in my territory. He wasn't good. He wasn't bad. The fans were just kind of indifferent. So guys would move around in these different territories, learning what their niche was, learning what made them unique, and they would learn what would make them stand out to wrestling fans. So that was very much part of the paying your dues back in the day. You traveled these small territories week in and week out, and that was where you built your character. That was where you built your gimmick. Whatever your gimmick was going to be, you would spend this time traveling around the territories doing that. So in the territory days, most of these territories were part of a thing called the National Wrestling Alliance, the NWA. Georgia Championship Wrestling was a part of it. WCW was a part of it, which in the day was WCCW. GCW, FC, all these companies, Mid-South, Memphis, all these companies were part of the National Wrestling Alliance. So usually with the NWA, they would have these territories and they had one champion for the territories. Now there would be a television champion, a European champion, an intercontinental champion, a United States champion, and there might even be a Georgia heavyweight championship. But there was only one world champion, and he traveled to all the territories. And at the time I was growing up watching wrestling, that guy was most of the time always going to be Ric Flair. Ric Flair was the essential, quintessential, consummate champion. And he would pop up in Von Erich territory. He would pop up in Florida territory. You know, he'd have big runs, and he would make other guys wrestling stars off of his name. Guys like Dusty Rhodes, guys like Sting, guys like, you know, Sting didn't start. Everybody thinks Sting started in WCW. Sting actually started in the AWA, the American Wrestling Alliance. But anyway, Ric Flair would travel to these different territories, and he would defend the title against their up-and-coming star, whether it be a Dusty Rhodes, whether it was a Nikita Koloff, or whether it was a Kerry Von Erich or a Magnum TA. The NWA would position these guys against Flair, and if they could work a good angle against Flair, like he did with Harley Race, then they would really become contenders then for becoming the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. They really got their name in the hat to become the World Heavyweight Champion under the guys that they could work a good program with Ric Flair. So the territories back in the day, before one company took everything and went global, the territorial thing was very unique. Meaning, if a person came from Calgary, from Stampede Wrestling, from Stu Hart's territory, you could see that style of wrestling. If they came from Mexico, you could see the luchador style. If they came from Georgia, you could see the Georgia ground and pound style. If they were smaller guys, you could see the high flying stuff off the top ropes. We got Rey Mysterio and just a whole list of guys who can do these aerial tricks. Back in the day, guys like Brian Pillman and Chris Jericho, those were your main event high flyers. They were the ones coming off the top rope. But wrestling back then was very much the land of the giants. Smaller guys would curtain jerk, or they would mid-card, and your bigger guys like a Nikita Koloff, who's just jacked. May not even be a great wrestler, but he had a gimmick that got over. And then you had your veterans like a Nikolai Volkov or a German Assassin. These were the guys that could take anybody and have a good match with them. Literally, they could just walk in the dressing room and say, give me this guy to work, and they could go out there and have a good work with them. Which, if you follow wrestling, that's how Sting ended up working with Ric Flair so long, and how Sting got his break was literally Ric Flair walked in the dressing room one night and said, let me work with this kid, and the rest is history. So you very much did things by a pecking order. There was a absolute pecking order in professional wrestling back in those days. As a wrestling fan, I grew up in the South, in Georgia. I watched Gordon Soley call wrestling for Georgia Championship Wrestling. We very much loved the NWA. We loved the WCW. I can remember when I was a kid watching Tony Schiavone interview Ric Flair, and I can even remember, guys, the interview that Arn Anderson, it was Arn Anderson, Ole Anderson, Ric Flair, and Tully Blanchard were all out at the table one night. And you can look this up and watch it on YouTube. It's actually very cool. Where Arn Anderson said, not since the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse has a unit come together with so much power. And that's how the Four Horsemen were born. But in the pecking order, getting back to talking about the territories a little more, you did things the right way. Now, of course, Vince McMahon Jr. would come along and he would purchase the Worldwide Wrestling Federation from his dad. He would drop one of the W's and it became the World Wrestling Federation, now World Wrestling Entertainment. The story goes that Vince bought the company from his dad, gave him $1 million for it, and bought it. Bought the territory, the company, and all. Now, according to who you ask, I don't know that this is true, but guys, according to who you ask, Vince Sr. only sold Junior the company under the realization that Vince would not, try to go against other territories, other companies. So cable television was where we got our wrestling from, our mainstream wrestling, meaning the WCW, Saturday night shows and all that in the South. So we would watch all these wrestlers that we loved go through all this stuff. And yeah, we watched the WWF, especially, those who were fortunate enough to have cable at the time got to watch the WWF. We got to see the Hogans and the Roddy Pipers and the Macho Man Randy Savages. We got to see all those caricatures, but we got to see wrestling in the South. And when Vince started buying up the territories, meaning he was putting people out of business, and mainly he would do this by going in and offering to pay their top talent more money to work for him, or he would go to a news station and say, hey, you've got so-and-so's wrestling on your station at 2 o'clock Eastern. I'll buy that television time and I'll give you more for it. So Vince was very much playing dirty pool, but to his credit, Vince was playing to win. He was buying up these territories. He was playing to win. And, it sucked to see it. It sucked to see a lot of the small-time promotions and the small-time promoters kind of go to the wayside. It hurt because you fell in love with these characters that would go away. But was it business-wise? Was it smart? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at WWE today. So, you can be mad about it happening, but you really can't deny that the formula that he was playing with was a very successful formula. But these small-time wrestling companies, a lot of them went from being territorial to just regional. They were really just, some of them were able to survive. A lot of new, smaller promotions would pop up out of that. But it really was when Vince started buying up the companies, and it really was the end of an era for a lot of places. But now in the South, guys, we were still very much holding our own, because by this time, Jim Crockett had basically went belly up with WCW. He just could not make it profitable, so Ted Turner would come in and buy Jim Crockett out. Now, this is the turning point of the one last holdout, which was WCW, part of the National Wrestling Alliance. This was really the turning point of the one last holdout, not only running from Vince, but actually turning head first into Vince and meeting him head first under his own rules, which was, you try to go head to head with me, I'm just going to buy you out and purchase your company, and I'm going to put you out of business. So when Ted Turner bought WCW, the formula changed. Things shifted. And that was where some of the wrestling that we enjoyed as kids growing up would come from. That's where we would see the Ric Flairs and the Stings go to the top of the mountain. We would see just an influx of great talent come out of that. Because now you're kind of getting away from all the hokey stuff, and you're getting to the stuff that's going to make people interested in your product, if that makes sense. You're starting to tell the good stories, because to be competitive, you have to tell the good stories. Now, in this episode, I'm not going to go into the Monday Night Wars, because that's kind of been overdone. I'll talk about it a little bit here and there, but I just kind of wanted to talk about how cool it was in the 80s and the early 90s to be a fan of professional wrestling, living in the South. I mean, WCW and NWA, that was our brand. That was, we loved those companies. That was the companies that represented us. So, you know, I can remember being a kid watching my great aunt get so mad watching Ric Flair on television that she would actually swing her television she would swing her pocketbook at the television. But y'all give me just a minute. Let me get refreshed here and filled up, and we'll get back on the road. Hang tight. Oh, man, guys, just may have got a couple of new subscribers at the store. We'll see. Yeah, I'll tell you guys, being a wrestling fan in the South was, it was really fun. It was, because you got to see these old timers react to everything in real time. And man, like I said, my great aunt Rethel, she'd get pissed. She hated Ric Flair. Well, let me change that. She loved to hate Ric Flair. But when Vince started buying up the territories, guys, like I said, WCW wasn't having any of it. They weren't going to go away. They really were the last holdouts. And, you know, that war that went on between WCW and WWE back in the day, the Monday Night Wars, those were special episodes, special moments. But you know, it just made it that much special that you had all those guys and gals who would go out there and wrestle. Because I can remember the hoopla headed up to WrestleMania 1. You know, pretty well much Hulk Hogan and Wendy Richter had the WWF on their backs. So I can remember the hoopla that was surrounded all that. And I can remember seeing the spectacle of WrestleMania 1. But I can also remember Starrcade. I can remember the very first Starrcade. And then I can also remember Starrcade 91 when Sting and Ric Flair went for an hour. You know, I remember those matches because they were just that special. And that's a time in wrestling that's gone. Those times will never be around again. Because you had a couple different types of fan back then. You had the casual fan who only occasionally, if nothing else was on, they would turn on wrestling and they would watch it. But then you also had the hardcore fan who every time wrestling was on, they would watch it. But I don't know, guys. Let me know. Are y'all enjoying this stuff as much as I hope you are, the wrestling stuff? I mean, we could break down that Monday Night War thing a little bit on here on Saturdays if you'd like. I know this is all part of the rebuilding the Rolling with T-Bone channel. Just always evolving it, guys, new things. But let me know, would y'all like to see that? Would y'all be interested in that? would y'all even click on the video? But I'm liking my new microphone boom, guys. I think I've got this thing figured out now. This is a prototype, of course, but I've had fun talking. I love to talk about, and which y'all guys can probably tell that by the way the videos are. I love talking about wrestling. Wrestling has always been such a big part of my life. And of course now I've kind of gotten away from it. I'm not, I do keep up with what's going on, but I don't watch it religiously no more. I haven't watched an episode of Monday Night Raw. I couldn't even tell you when. But I'll kind of read up on what's going on and catch the stories and, watch a PLE on Peacock or something. But knowing what it used to be and now what it's changed into and how much that changed over the years. Pro wrestling from my youth isn't the pro wrestling that it is today. And, Vince McMahon had a lot to do with that. I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm not saying that as an argument that he screwed up professional wrestling. Not at all. I'm just saying that through McMahon, things changed. What we watched changed. The way we watched it changed. Who we watched changed. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. But it was a change. Good, bad. You have to decide that for yourself. But I'll tell you what, guys. I think this is going to wrap this Saturday episode up. If you're new here, I'd like for you to go backwards from here and check out some of the other videos. Don't just hit that subscribe button right now. And if you like what you see, then you think we're right for you, then hit that subscribe button and become a member of the Rolling with T-Bone crew. But guys, until the next time, y'all take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and hey, thanks for watching.